three divers set out to film underwater videos in a cave in Guizhou, planning to challenge a diving record, but just 20 minutes after entering the water, the teammate at the back mysteriously vanished. The companions in front weren't alarmed at first, assuming he had simply turned back to the surface early. It wasn't until they finished exploring the cave and headed back that they made the grim discovery of their teammate's body on the bottom. An underwater camera recovered later captured the entire process of how their companion lost his life. What seemed like an ordinary diving accident triggered a high-profile legal dispute 2 years later. This is the story we are telling today, the Yuchong River Cave diving tragedy in Guizhou. The Yuchong River is located in Yuchong Township, Dafang County, in the city of Bijie, Guizhou Province. On the surface, it looks like just an ordinary rural river, but its source is known by locals as the Dragon Pool. As a typical karst cave, the entrance to Longtan Cave sits about 40 meters underwater and requires a horizontal entry. The known length of the cave is at least 700 meters, featuring many branches and a complex environment. In the cave diving community, these undeveloped caves are often called wild caves. Located in a remote area with no management, it is naturally not open to the public. Its discovery dates back to 2020. At that time, a local Guizhou diver named Zhang Shangqian explored the site for the first time. After word got out, in early 2021, one of the country's top divers, Wei Bo, led a team to explore the cave. Limited by their preparations at the time, they stopped after exploring about 200 meters into the cave. Perhaps hearing that even top divers hadn't finished exploring it, gave Shanghai diver Yan Jun the idea to break the record. As a veteran diver with multiple certifications, in October 2021, Yan Jun organized a group of 7 diving enthusiasts through a chat group. The plan was to push the exploration distance of the cave to 800 meters. In addition to the local diver Zhang Shangqian, the team included his diving partner and business associate, Yin Xiaoguang. Yin Xiaoguang was originally a manager at a finance firm in Shanghai. He later quit his job to learn diving from Yan Jun and earned his instructor certification. He and Yan Jun were close personal friends. Shortly before the accident, the two had co-founded a diving company. For this expedition, they intended to film cave diving videos to post online. Unexpectedly, however, Yin Xiaoguang's career transition came to an end in a wild cave in Guizhou. Around 1 p.m. on October 30, 2021, the 7-member team from Shanghai arrived at the cave at the source of the Yuchong River. It's worth noting that this was already their 4th dive at this location. The plan for the day was to dive in 2 separate groups in shifts. Following the guide ropes laid down in previous days, they aimed to reach the 800-meter mark. The first group consisted of Yan Jun, Yin Xiaoguang, and Zhang Xiuli. The division of labor among the 3 was clear. Yan Jun was responsible for laying the guide rope, which is standard procedure in cave diving. This ensures divers can safely return along the same path in a complex cave environment. Zhang Xiuli, a diving enthusiast, was in charge of providing lighting for Yan Jun. Yin Xiaoguang, at the back, was tasked with filming the underwater cave solo. Clearly, 800 meters was no easy task. To prevent accidents during the dive, they set up 3 backup gas cylinder stations underwater. The team also verbally agreed on an emergency plan. The plan was that if a diver felt unwell or got separated, they should return to the surface on their own. But these seemingly thorough plans still led to tragedy. At about 2 p.m. that day, the 3 put on their CCR gear and entered the water one by one. Yan Jun led the way, followed closely by Zhang Xiuli, with Yin Xiaoguang at the rear. As they went deeper, the light faded rapidly. After descending about 40 meters from the entrance, they entered the main cave horizontally as planned. At this point, the terrain became complex, making it easy to get lost if one strayed from the guide rope. Everything was normal for the first 20 minutes after entering the water. The 3 maintained their formation, each performing their assigned tasks. But after 20 minutes, Yan Jun looked back while laying the rope, only to find that Yin Xiaoguang had disappeared. But remembering the emergency plan they made before the dive, he figured Yin Xiaoguang might have headed back to the surface on his own. At the very least, there were backup gas stations along the way. So, facing this unplanned situation, the 2 weren't overly concerned. Yan Jun went back to focusing on laying the guide rope, while Zhang Xiuli continued to provide light. Half an hour later, they finished their mission and began to head back. But on the way back, they found Yin Xiaoguang's diving camera abandoned on the bottom. With sinking hearts, they continued swimming for another 10 minutes, before coming across the scene they feared most. Yin Xiaoguang was lying motionless on the bottom. He clearly showed no signs of life. His diving gear seemed perfectly fine, but the regulator mouthpiece had fallen out of his mouth. Faced with this emergency, Yan Jun tried to stay calm and unclipped 2 gas cylinders from his friend's left side. He attempted to bring his companion's body back to the surface. But at that moment, Zhang Xiuli began to panic. In cave diving, irregular breathing is a major danger. Yan Jun had no choice but to lead Zhang Xiuli back to the surface first. By around 5 p.m., the two successfully exited the cave. It had been about 3 hours since they first entered the water. Upon hearing the news, Zhang Shangqin was the first to call the police. Local authorities rushed to the scene immediately. However, the inside of the wild cave was complex. Since it was already night, the low water temperatures posed a life-threatening risk to rescuers as well. After careful consideration, the command center decided that conditions were too dangerous for a night rescue. That night, the diving partners informed Yin Xiaoguang's family in Shanghai. The family arrived in Dafang County the very next day. The official recovery mission began at 11 a.m. on November 1st. An 8-person team, including Yan Jun and other diving partners, started at 11 o'clock and, after about 2.5 hours, found Yin Xiaoguang about 400 meters from the cave entrance. He was then successfully brought out of the water. Medical personnel on site confirmed that Yin Xiaoguang had drowned. Based on the lack of signs of struggling on the body, it is highly likely he lost consciousness without prolonged suffering. As for the specific cause of death, there are no public records available online. It is speculated that the low water temperature at the time caused physical distress, leading to the accident. Afterward, the diving partners pulled some money together as a condolence gift for the Yin family. The incident seemed to have reached a conclusion, but at a gathering more than a year later, a partner's comment, "I'm sorry, Yin Xiaoguang," brought back the family's painful memories. It also raised questions in their minds. Exactly how much meaning was hidden in that "I'm sorry"? The more the Yin family thought about it, the more suspicious they became. At the end of 2023, 2 years after Yin Xiaoguang's death, the family filed a lawsuit in court. They argued that Yan Jun, as the organizer, failed his duty to ensure safety. They also claimed the other partners failed to help, ultimately leading to Yin's death. They demanded that the organizer, the diving partners, the person who recommended the cave, and the company co-founded by Yin and Yan, pay a total of over 1.48 million yuan in damages. But from the defendant's perspective, cave diving is a voluntary activity. Participants should assume their own risks and cannot rely solely on companions for their safety. Furthermore, Yin Xiaoguang had already lost consciousness and could not breathe on his own underwater. Because the dive required decompression, he couldn't be brought to the surface immediately. Even if his partners had been right there, it wouldn't have changed the fatal outcome. The defendants also argued that Yin Xiaoguang did not follow the original verbal agreement. The reasoning was based on a video recorded by Yin Xiaoguang himself, which showed the three diving into the main cave shortly after entering the water. They followed the red guide rope, with the two partners in front and Yin Xiaoguang filming from behind. However, the partners were nowhere to be seen in the footage. Soon after, the video captured the sound of heavy breathing and coughing. At this point, Yin Xiaoguang appeared to be in distress. A few minutes later, the camera fell from his hands. Since it was still on, the camera automatically recorded him swimming. Then a flashlight appeared, belonging to Yin Xiaoguang. The directional markers on the guide rope and the frame pointed toward the exit. This indicated that after feeling unwell, Yin Xiaoguang first swam further into the cave, before turning back toward the entrance. This action clearly contradicted the verbal agreement made before the dive. So, was Yin Xiaoguang's response inappropriate? Coach Weibo had this to say: "The correct procedure should have been to notify the partners, after which the team would immediately abort the dive, and return to the surface together as a group. It should never have been an individual return." It is worth mentioning that, during an expedition in this same cave, Weibo and his partners always stayed close together. This stood in stark contrast to Yin Xiaoguang's footage, where his companions were nowhere to be found. On October 23, 2024, the court issued its first instance verdict. The organizer, Yan Jun, was found 10% liable for Yin Xiaoguang's death. He was ordered to pay the family over 233,000 yuan in damages. The court dismissed all other claims made by the Yin family. This tragedy proves once again that in extreme sports like cave diving, there is a very thin line between courage and recklessness. And when things go wrong, the margin for error is almost zero.